And welcome to another edition of the Nerdy Agent Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Pettersen, with my brothers and fellow nerds, Josh and AJ. I love how the script for the 8th consecutive week says brothers and fellow nerds and brothers. That's just never going to change. Today we are going to talk about the Builder Confidence Index. If you have been listening for a while, we did talk about this in the past, so we're kind of doing an update on it, comparing to where it was, where we think it might be going, what that means for the market, and what you need to know. But first, the Would You Rather of the week. I did cross out Josh's, added a new one, thought this one maybe was going to be a little bit better.
I guess ChatGPT makes better Would You Rathers than I do.
Would you rather have a house with an elevator or a house with a spiral staircase that goes all the way to the roof?
Does that mean that the elevator doesn't go to the roof?
I would imagine the elevator does not go to the roof.
I'm going to choose elevator.
Depends on how the elevator breaks the house up, I guess, and the high spiral staircase. I tend to be opposed to spiral staircases. They tend to be right in the middle of houses most of the time and just take up so much visual and physical space that, and I think I have young kids, so I'm always freaked out that they're going to fall down the spiral staircase. So I would take the elevator too.
Yeah, I mean, spiral staircases just aren't super functional.
See, I'm going to take the spiral staircase, and not only am I going to combat what Josh said, because I'm going to put a spiral staircase. I'm literally going to lay a concrete pad, put a spiral staircase on it, and we're building the house around the spiral staircase as well.
It's pretty cool.
The house is built for.
There's always so many caveats to these questions, it seems like.
I still feel like now you're encouraging your kids to just take a spiral staircase up to the roof and fall off the roof.
That's terrifying.
Well, you could put a lock on the door at the top. All right,
good
let's
question.
Let's get into what matters. It seems like that Would You Rather was a flop. We'll work on it being better next week.
It was great.
Let's just do a brief overview for those who haven't been listening, haven't listened to our last one on this. Explain to them what the Builder Confidence Index is.
So the Builder Confidence Index, like many other indices that we talk about, is a monthly measure performed with a lot of the builders nationwide. So survey questions go out, and the builders fill them out, and on a monthly basis report that back. Based on the responses that they get back, they compare to the past and kind of say how confident are builders on a scale of 1 to 100, with 50 being kind of net neutral in terms of their general confidence level in the marketplace. This is important because obviously building creates supply. Right now, our biggest problem is that we are very, very low on the supply front. And we've talked about this in the past on the podcast, that if you cannot create more supply, even if buyers are selling or even if people are selling their houses, they're usually moving to another house. So it's very, very difficult to fix a supply shortage without a lot of building. It's the number one way in which you can kind of get out of that. So we track this really closely because if builder confidence is looking really good, that tends to correlate strongly to more houses being built. And if builder confidence is bad, that tends to create a shortage of homes in the future. And also takes more than 5 days to build a house. So it's a forward-looking measure in terms of what building is going to look like.
And a reminder for the listeners that we are in the Twin Cities market. So I think from a national level, we are at kind of an inventory crunch in general. Mm-hmm. Other markets are in different positions. In Minnesota, the Twin Cities market, we're at an extreme inventory crunch. So the builder starts and kind of new builds are a very important part of us trying to get out of that, essentially. So
yeah, I think nationally, outside of just a few markets that maybe got oversaturated or people moved out of, it's kind of a similar story everywhere right now in terms of the supply shortage. But yeah, there are obviously micro situations across the country where that's not necessarily the case.
So to get started then with the confidence index, give us an idea on where it has been the last, 6 months to a year, and then where it's at right now.
So 50 would be a reading that's like even, right? So anything below that would be what they would consider negative, I think is the word that they use for it. Last May, it was 69. We saw it dip into some negative territory, leading into when these rates started to go high. It got super low. I mean, you can kind of see, we can share this chart, but it got, right around 30 at one point, but it has been increasing recently. And this May, it was up to 50, which again is the first reading since last July that wasn't negative, which is great. It's the 5th straight month of gains in the confidence index, which is awesome as well. A lot of this is, the share of builders dropping home prices on their spec homes. The actual percentage of homes that are dropping in price has been decreasing for several months now. That number was 36 last November. It's dropped now to 27% of spec homes that are reducing prices in May. A lot of them are offering some type of incentive still. Sales incentives like lender credits for using a specific lender or title company or whatever, or we'll finish your basement for free if you build with us in the next month. You're still seeing a lot of that going on. But home prices dropping that are already completed new construction has been decreasing over the last several months. So again, 5th straight month of gains, which is, I think, positive for the overall U.S. macro market. We've talked a lot about how builders can help with inventory problems, and I think they're seeing, like we are, a sustained long period where we just don't have a lot of existing home listings and home sales.
Are they seeing it as clearly as you are right now?
Yes.
AJ just had LASIK done yesterday, so he's seeing everything in 4D.
They did the Bradley Cooper LASIK for you, right? Where you can see things in advance of them happening.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Can I just add one thing, Luke? I think when we did this podcast last, it was like November, December, and that was when sky was kind of falling everywhere, so everyone was very uncertain. There was a lot of fear in the marketplace, and I think we harkened back to 2007, 2008. When the financial crisis drove a lot of builders into a really negative place. Some people went bankrupt or really lost a lot during that time frame, and that's when this measure, if you want to go back in time to like 2008, was down, sub 20.
It was the lowest it's ever been at 8.
Exactly.
That's the number that I wanted to share too.
And it had been, tracking along in the high 60s to 70s back then, and then going into COVID, that number kept going up. Then when COVID hit, it spiked down to about 30 again because everyone freaked out when COVID happened. But then, we had a very crazy market in 2020, 2021, 2022 that brought that number up into 80s. And so when November, December, when we did this podcast the last time happened, there was a lot of fear, and that number dropped very precipitously from over 80 down into the 30s. And I think it's what Taja's point. It's coming back up, but I don't think they've shaken off the fear of what was going on as the interest rates started rising, as the market started slowing, as they had to really offload specs at pretty high discounts in the winter timeframe. And so there's always going to be a more conservative approach from builders, specifically now after they've dealt with what they dealt with in 2008, that they're going to build in a way that's going to maintain profitability over the long term versus necessarily, fits and starts in terms of trying to react to the ups and downs of this market. So I was surprised to see 50 was the number, to be honest. When we looked into this, I thought it'd be higher because our market's, really competitive, and I think new construction is doing really well right now, at least locally. But based on the supply shortage nationwide, I figured it would be a little bit better. But to that point, just there's always going to be a little seed of doubt that the market can turn on them at any point. And with interest rates where they are right now, I think they're just moving a little bit more slowly.
I think because of the 2008 recession, we're going to see a lot of at least more volatility when the market is uncertain from a builder confidence perspective.
Yep.
Just because, again, they don't want to be the ones holding the bag. And the one big piece with this is even when builders start to get confidence really quickly is that the inventory they can add to the market lags quite a bit behind because it takes them 6 to 12 months to build houses. Now, they are able to build houses right now a lot quicker than they were 2 years ago during the pandemic, because during the pandemic, it got to like 12 months, I think, 8 to 12 months.
Yep.
And they're building them in 6 months again, so they can go a little bit quicker. However, it still takes a while. So if they say, oh, the market's great, they still feel like 3 months later, it might not be, and then they had started building all these houses, and they kind of get left
and the pain
with
of the winter is probably still real for them, right? Like they probably took some pretty heavy balance sheet hits on stuff that they spec'd out and were going to sell in November, December, January. I mean, we talked about it back then with our clients when we did that podcast. It was like we've been getting some sweet deals on new construction. So if you have clients looking for new construction when the deals were hot, you could kind of push even the biggest guys around a little bit because they didn't have any buyers for them, and so they don't forget that stuff as quickly as other people will forget that within the marketplace.
And so we've kind of already talked about it. I guess based on what we've been seeing, I think at this table, AJ probably does the most new builds. Based on where the builder confidence has been and where it's at currently, are you seeing that affect the marketplace for clients trying to get new builds?
I mean, I don't know necessarily. I know for a while there, back in 2018, 2019, when I was doing a lot of national build new construction, we were negotiating a lot when the market wasn't so tight. As soon as 2020 happened, that's kind of gone out the window. But I will say, even as you look at like new starts and this graph that we've got, the new starts, completions, and permits were all kind of hovering around 1,200, which is thousands of units, and I believe this is on a 12-month trail here. You can see it kind of, the starts kind of cratered off.
Yes, it's 1.2 million.
1.2 million, there you go. So it kind of cratered off around the pandemic time like we talked about. But completions has stayed pretty steady. And actually, if you drew a line through the center point of the completions part of this chart, you would see that we actually have a slight upward trajectory in the last 5 years. It's bounced up and down. A lot of that's seasonally adjusted, I would say.
Yeah.
It has taken a pretty nice bounce recently, and the permit starts and completions have all started to kind of line up. So again, you pull your permit, you wait 3 months maybe, you start, then you build for 6 to 8 months, and then you're completed. It's nice to see that the actual completed homes, whether they be spec, custom, dirt builds with national builders, whatever, has stayed pretty steady actually for the last 5 years, and it's actually on an upward trend, which is super important because we've talked about in the past how between 2010 and 2020, I believe the number was 10 million homes short of what we needed to build. We can double check, fact check that, but I think that's about what the number was. So when you think about that, 1.2 million units, whatever it is, right, on a 12-month trail, we're going to have to make up several 100,000 per year, probably in the next 10 to 15 years, to get to a point where we have enough homes for the people that want to live in homes to live in them.
Yep. Now, what's crazy, though, is even if you think about it, you're right, the completions have stayed relatively steady month over month, but the starts have changed pretty rapidly. Like, you look back to April 2022, when the Consumer Confidence Index was at an 80, they started 1.8 million homes, right? Now, the supply chain was short, so they were trying to get them all going, and they knew there was going to be a longer build cycle, so they were probably working on it that way, too. But that number's down to 1.43 right now. So you're down 20%, 21% year over year in starts, which I think is kind of telling, where it's like, okay, everything's hot. Let's build. And all of a sudden, November, December, and interest rates happen. And they go, oh, we got to go back to where we were before this. We can't get over our skis on this. And so they have really pulled back, to look at the correlation, the relationship between starts and the index. When the index has been down, the starts go down.
Yep.
And so I think that they got going fast and then got nervous that they were going too fast, and now they've kind of slowed back down to more of a normal pace. So,
I think that's a naturally leading indicator, right?
Yep.
But the variable in here, which I think is, again, a positive outlook, would be they're starting and completing kind of the same number of homes within a similar time period. I think the homes are being completed faster now. So if, the house in our neighborhood would be a great example, right? Started in 2021. They're not even done yet.
The one by me?
Yeah. And whether that's mismanaged or whatever, it is what it is. But I think there's a lot of homes like that were taking a lot longer because they didn't prepare ahead. They wanted a specific kind of flooring.
They didn't have enough trusses.
And they didn't have enough trusses or shingles or
HVAC
sheathing.
Well, the rates were also different when they started versus when they are now.
Exactly. But point being, like, you shouldn't really see the separation from permit starts and completions that we've been seeing. And I think now that a lot of that's been filtered through and sorted out, the nice thing is these large engines, because the biggest people that are going to impact the new construction market are your Lennars, Pulte's, D.R. Hortons, at least here in the Twin Cities locally. And I think they can build homes almost twice as fast as they were 2 years ago, which is awesome because they can change their model and change their engine and get going faster if they need to.
Or the 3D printed homes that they can build in 4 weeks.
There you go. They're doing that.
One of the things I think it was Josh mentioned possibly was historically the confidence goes up, the starts increase.
Yep.
So for the agents out there, again, because we're mostly talking numbers, how does this really help you? We're seeing the confidence increase a couple months in a row here.
Yep.
And so one might argue with historical saying when confidence increases, starts increase, that we might start to see as we get into June, July, August, that the starts might start to pick up in your local market. And if that's the case, it might be a situation where if you have someone who bought a house and they were like, well, there's not really much for us to buy, they bought it 3 years ago, whatever that might be, they might be in a pretty good position if they can prepare themselves for the starts that are coming to get maybe a pretty good price new build, sell their place at a pretty good price, and get a house they want.
Yeah, new construction is always a good option for certain clients that are looking for something like that and want to live in the areas where the builds are available, right? So there's always, it depends on your situation, but if it checks the right boxes, it's something that I'm always kind of evaluating and pursuing for them. I've had other clients that have moved into the new construction realm that weren't thinking new construction from the front, just based on where the new construction market is. So to your point, understanding this index is going to help you understand the amount of pressure you have to be able to put on builders to buy new construction. So like to the point AJ made earlier, like last March, I had a person build or start a build, and we didn't really get much opportunity to negotiate. It was like, do you want it or do you not? Someone else is looking at the lot already, so you can either take it or you leave it. And then by November, December, we were pushing Lennar around. I had 2 in one community that we got, 100,000 and 70, 80,000 off the list price on, because they were in a spot where they were nervous. And so it just kind of will ebb and flow based on where this index goes. But I would say tracking this index as an agent is really important, because you'll essentially know for your clients how much pressure you have to be able to put on these builders. So most clients don't assume that they can negotiate with new construction. Most clients don't assume that they need an agent for new construction, because why would I need you? I can just go in and build my house, right? But if, like, I had a client call me and they looked at it, and I was like, guys, you could probably get a free finished basement if you just ask them for it. Like, I can ask them for $50,000. They'll probably give it to you right now based on what I know about what's going on in this market. A lot of that tied to the confidence level, and we were able to get some money off of that. And so then you actually add value for your clients with new construction in cases like that.
And when there's more of them getting started, they want to sell more of them. So, like, they're trying to get stuff on and get stuff gone as fast as possible, especially when the going's good.
Yep. But go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's something you can use to speak to your clients.
Yes.
And call them and say, hey, have you noticed the builder confidence index is increasing? This might be, we've talked about it, but it hasn't made sense for you. It might make sense to kind of kick the can down the road a little bit and see if this ends up working out, just because starts might start to increase as well.
The optimal time to purchase a new construction home is when the confidence level goes up and then starts coming down quickly. Because once that confidence level turns and starts going negative, that's when they probably have already started homes that they have to get rid of, and now they're super nervous.
Yep.
So it typically happens more in the fall, winter, or when rates change quickly, just because that's when there's less buyers out, at least in our local market, fall, winter. Or if rates change quickly and they start getting really nervous, that's when they have to get rid of stuff. Also think about their reporting. So if you're looking at large publicly traded entities, if they have like end of year quarterly earnings or end of quarter earnings, oftentimes they push incentives around those programs because they got numbers to hit for Wall Street.
If you didn't listen to anything else on this podcast, just replay what Josh just said, because that is a huge value add you can help for your clients, you can bring for them. Based on where this index is now, where it's been, and I know we've talked about this a little bit, but do we have any crystal ball on where do we think this is going to go in the next, let's say, 6 months?
I mean, rates have bounced a little bit in the past week or two upward, so that's not helping things necessarily. Like the average rate, I think, is around 6.8, 6.9 right now. That being said, the point still gets you into the low sixes. Like that's what every one of these MBS markets is trying to push. So that would be the only thing that maybe would make them a little less confident. If I were a builder right now, I'd feel pretty freaking confident if I had some land within shouting distance of a metro area, which if you look in our West Metro in Victoria, where they're building like crazy, there's so many options out there that are actually pretty dang affordable for like second-time buyers, move-up buyers. So I'd be kind of shocked if this starts to go backwards, because it doesn't really make any sense for what's going on in the market, given existing homes are going in multiple offers. Everything's still super competitive. There seems to be still a massive demand for housing, partially because everybody needs a place to live, but also there's not enough listings coming on the market. And I don't know. I just think this market's going to continue to be competitive, and one of the only real ways to alleviate the inventory problem is by builders building more houses.
Yeah, I'd say confidence tends to be really highly correlated with certainty, right? So when the market is more certain, you know what's going on, you're going to be more confident, right? Fear tends to come when things are uncertain. So barring we'll know in the next 10 days if the U.S. is going to default on their debt, and then there's going to be an economic meltdown, whatever the media is pushing on that. Seems unlikely will happen, but if that doesn't happen, a lot of the other things going on right now are pretty steady compared to where we've been over the last 3 to 5 years. So builders, I think, at least feel, I would guess, more certain about where the future prognostication is going. The crystal ball seems a little clearer that, okay, we have a supply shortage, so if we build, people will come, right? The field of dreams. Like, if you build it, they will come, because right now there's no other inventory for them. And the market is still relatively good on a buy side for a lot of people. So they'd have a better understanding of how people are likely looking to shop in these markets. I think that they're probably looking at 2024 pretty confidently right now. It's my hunch.
And so that leads us directly into the script of the week. since the weather has changed, have you been golfing yet, Josh?
No.
Haven't went golfing. I went golfing and realized I'm still bad.
Me too.
So let's say you're out in the golf course, you're with some buddies, possibly past clients. They own a house, and they mention, what's going on with new builds in the market. Like, we're thinking about maybe doing that. What does that look like? What can you say to be the expert in this situation?
I would say, the higher rates actually crushed the builder confidence level. So for several months there, builders were feeling not very confident that they were going to be able to build and sell homes at the prices they would need to make money. As the rates have stayed at kind of the levels that they've been at for quite a while now and really not had too much volatility, the builder confidence across the country has improved for 5 consecutive months. And we're obviously seeing that within this index and how they're answering these questions, but also here locally, we're seeing builders start to pick up on building, offer new incentives for people to get more demand in the doors, and building more spec homes to get people moving. So we're seeing a nice opportunity for folks who are in that move up range, which in our market is $500,000 to $900,000, that they can scoop up some new construction, a lot less competition. They don't have to deal with all the nonsense of multiple offers, and they can get into a nice new home that is super move-in ready. So I'm working with tons of clients like this right now, and it's a great opportunity for the right person.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that. I mean, I think calling out that, when the market was crazy back in 2020, 2021, this builder confidence level was in the 80s. And that was when we literally had cases where it's like, we have 2 buyers for this. We're going to flip a coin, and then the buyer who gets it right wins, right? So it was chaotic to the point where you were having to overpay essentially to get into new construction. Now that number's basically neutral. It's right in the middle. It's at 50 because the rates are high, so the buyer pool is thinned out a little bit. But there's enough supply shortage in the market that new construction is still moving. So builders are going to keep building, but you're not going to AJ's point, be in a crazy situation where you're not going to be able to even get into a new house. And the supply chain has normalized enough where they're going to be able to build quickly enough for you and have a relatively certain timeline on when you're going to get that house ready for you. So if you're comfortable with living in the areas that are, able to be built up right now, it's a really good option for you if you're looking for a new home. It's kind of how I'd answer that question.
Love it. I think an important piece there was not only mentioning where the confidence has been, but the actual number. Mm-hmm. Because if you can pull a number out of a hat while you're just with somebody and you have that number and you follow this, they will go, oh, wow, like I didn't even know there was a builder confidence index. You know the exact number of where it was a couple of years ago and what it is right now. That's really impressive. You seem to be the expert in the room, like we're trying to be. So that's all we have this week for the Nerdy Agent Podcast. And as always, remember, be better.